So this is, we kind of went through some of the announcements and some of the updates. We are now getting into the meat and potatoes. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, we're getting into the tofu scramble. I don't know, I don't know what the alternative is. Anyway, we're going to get into the heart of the matter here a little bit. So here is the session agenda. We're going to talk about student eligibility, what that looks like. We're going to talk about different types of awards and cycles, right? Basically, kind of an overview of Cal Grant. And then we're going to talk about renewals as well. So let's start with student eligibility. I think most people are kind of aware of what this is, but if you're brand new, you may not be. So it might be a good refresher for those of you who have been doing this for a minute. All right. So to apply for a Cal Grant, everything starts with an application. So in California, we have the FAFSA, which is the federal application, obviously, and we also have the very important California Dream Act application, or CADA. Uh, One thing I would like to say, one ask that we have here at CSAC is when you're talking about applications, I think it's really important to be inclusive. And so if you say FAFSA, you know, if you're talking to a group of students or you're posting something on your website or you're making posters or you're out in the community doing outreach or your coaches are out, your outreach people are out talking to a high school group of students, if they say FAFSA, really the very next words out of their mouth should be, or the California Dream Act application. It's really, really important, right? They're both just applications. They both do essentially the same thing. They just happen to serve a different cohort of students. And if we don't talk about the Dream Act application, we're stigmatizing an application that a lot of students and families are already fearful to do. And we don't want that. So please, that's our ask. FAFSA, and then the knee-jerk reaction should be California Dream Act application, right? Uh, it's like Pavlov's dogs. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, never mind. Take that back. FAFSA, California Dream Act application. So for the Dream Act application, you have to meet certain requirements in order to benefit by filling out the Dream Act application or the CADA. So specifically, this is for undocumented students. It can also be used by students who are from mixed status families. In other words, a student who could fill out the FAFSA, um, but maybe one or both of their parents um, are undocumented, don't have socials, and so in some cases they're fearful to fill out a federal form, and so we give them the option if they choose, if they decide to that they're not ready or don't want to fill out the FAFSA, we give them the opportunity to fill out the Dream Act application in lieu of the FAFSA. So that's how that works. Obviously, there's benefits to doing the FAFSA, right? You're going to get federal aid, you're going to get more money. But I don't like to tell students and families, which application they should fill out. We can just give them the basic information and say, there's this here, there's this here. You as a family, you as a student need to decide which one you want to do. The good news is if they're kind of on the fence and they do fill out the Dream Act application, they can always, if they change their mind or a little bit later, they say, you know what, I think I want to do the FAFSA now. They can do that basically at any time because they'll have an on-time application with the CADA, and then they can go back and fill out the FAFSA, and that will process through automatically. So that's one thing to think about. It can be with or without DACA. DACA became such a political football, unfortunately. Um, and obviously, there are no high school students now with DACA. In fact, most DACA students are out there in the workforce, right? Or continuing on with their education. But it doesn't matter if they have DACA or they had it previously. It doesn't impact their ability to be AB 540 eligible. If they're TPS, so from one of the countries that has that status, or they're U visa holders. So this is the group who can fill out and benefit from filling out the California Dream Act application. Now, there's a couple other requirements. Um, Now, back in the day, you may remember that when we first kind of started with the Dream Act application, basically the requirements were 3 years in a high school and 3 years of high school uh, credits, right? And that was it, right? Oh, I was only in high school for 2 years and 11 months. No, sorry. or I only have X number of credits, not quite 3 years worth. Oops, sorry. And unfortunately, that closed the door on a lot of students who otherwise would have been eligible. So we've expanded that greatly with other legislation, SB 68, for example, um, and so now the requirements are 3 years of high school coursework and 3 years of total attendance um, at a school. So that means that if they were at a high school for 2.5 years, but they did 3 years with the credit, um, to make up the time element, they could have attended an elementary school or middle school to make up that difference. Now, obviously, there's no credits or units from an elementary school or middle school. This is only to make up the corresponding amount of time. Option B, if let's say they were only in a California high school for 2 years, um, physically, and they only have, they graduate from the high school, but they only have 2 years worth of high school credits, then they had the option of making up the difference by attending an adult school or community college. So if they don't have the full 3 years of attendance at a California high school. So now there's options. And really the takeaway here is we should never tell the student, you're never going to be Cal Grant eligible. We should never tell an undocumented student, you're never going to be Cal Grant eligible, because now there's a pathway. And so we need to be aware of that. They also need to either graduate from a California high school or have the equivalent, which is typically a GED, but there's other tests that they can take. Or they can get an associate degree from a California community college, etc. So that's good news for the undocumented cohort of students that we work with. Okay, FAFSA is pretty straightforward. You have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. So that would be, for example, a permanent resident. There's some other things. So if you've been granted asylum status has been granted, or you are, a refugee and you've been accepted as a refugee, there's some other things that would allow you to fill out the FAFSA. So here's just a couple more. Also, a T visa holder, not very common, but that would allow you to fill out the FAFSA as well. All right, deadlines. March 2nd is our priority deadline, and that really is the date that we talk about the most. We tell students and institutions we would really love everyone to complete an application by the March 2nd priority deadline. That gives them the greatest potential benefits, depending on what Cal Grant they qualify for and what institution they're going to end up going to. And we know, and I'm going to pull this up in a second. We know we have the September 2nd deadline, but I don't really even talk about September 2nd until after March 2nd. So then we talk about that a lot. So March 2nd is our priority deadline. We want students to complete an application by then. September 2nd is for new and current community college students, or students who are going to pursue a vocational, technical, occupational degree or certificate. It's also for current and former foster youth students. They have a second deadline. So we want to make sure that we're spreading the word now about the September 2nd deadline, which is what we're trying to focus on for students who are interested in going to a community college. Or maybe we have students who they just really weren't sure if they wanted to apply or they weren't sure where they wanted to go. Hey, fill out a application now, start at a community college, jump to a 4-year if that's the game plan. You still have lots of options. All right, first time Cal Grant applicants. This is pretty straightforward. So in order to process through for consideration for a Cal Grant, you have to have an on-time application. So either meeting the priority deadline, which is preferred, or the September 2nd deadline, if you're going to a community college, or you meet any of the other requirements we just talked about. You have to have a verified GPA, and then you'll get a Cal Grant. Look at that. This is a mathematical equation that anybody can get. So application and a verified GPA. Now, there are some exceptions. So Cal Grant C and Renewals, they don't require, a new GPA. So for Cal Grant C, no GPA is required. And for students who are renewing, once they've done the GPA the first time, right, and they're E1, for example, so maybe a student graduating from high school, they have their GPA uploaded by the school, they do their application, they get a Cal Grant. At that point, going forward, they're just renewal students. And really, unless something changes, they're just going to renew every year. They still have to fill out an application or update their application every year, but they don't have to put a new GPA in. Eligibility requirements. Okay, let's see. When we were doing this, I said, hey, I think we can squeeze, I don't know, another 3 or 6 boxes on this screen. Let's not waste the real estate. And they said, no, that's too much. So here are the basic eligibility requirements. You have to attend a Cal Grant eligible institution. That is uh, almost every college in the state of California. If you want to check, you can go to our website, and at the very bottom of the page, it will list all Cal Grant eligible institutions. There's also a list of institutions who, are not Cal Grant eligible, and that's a very short list. Sometimes it's 4, 5, 6 different institutions. And institutions, we're going to talk about the requirements for institutions. They can fall, in and out of Cal Grant eligibility, but obviously, all state schools are eligible. Community colleges are always going to be eligible. Um, the vast majority of other schools are eligible. You have to be at least a half-time student in order to get paid. Um, so that's normally a couple classes. You have to meet California residency requirements, income and asset ceilings, which we'll talk about. You have to have sufficient unmet need, which we'll talk about. Not be in default on any federal loan or overpayment of grant, etc. You have to be pursuing your first undergraduate degree. This is important. Sometimes we have international students who say, "Oh, I have a degree," and we want to make sure that we're interpreting that accurately because in different countries and different places, that degree may not correspond to a college degree. So, FYI, not be incarcerated, and they have to maintain SAP, so they have to maintain satisfactory academic progress. Cal Grant eligible schools, in order to meet eligibility, there's two main thresholds that are important. So one, the graduation rate. It has to be above 30%. And we look at that, we go back and we look at a cohort, and then we, continually do that, every single year. And we look at the percentage of full-time, first-time degree or certificate students um, who graduate in 150% or less published program length. I'm not going to say that again. I'm not going there. Anyway, you have to have your students graduating at this rate in order to maintain your Cal Grant eligibility. You also have to look at your cohort default rate. So this is the loan default rate, and it has to be under 15.5%. So again, we look at a cohort, a percentage of people who entered in on X year, and then we follow them and we see if that populace, that cohort, is meeting the criteria of 15.5% or less default, right? We don't want a school who's happy to have sign up people for whatever loans, and then those students don't get the job that they thought they could get or that they were indicated that they could get. Um, that's not a good situation. So I guess this helps in that regard. Um, so these are the two things that you need to be aware of. California residency. All right. So California residency is verified by the student institution. In other words, the determination on whether or not a student is a California resident is something that the college or university will verify, right? Asking for whatever documentation they need, etc. So, what they're going to look at, is the student a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, or they meet AB 540, right? These are the three things that they'll take a look at, and then they'll determine if the student meets the criteria to be a California resident. Income, assets, and financial need. So this is the 25-26 Cal Grant program income ceilings. You notice that it's based on the type of Cal Grant and the size of the family. So you want to make sure that um, uh, we tell high school counselors, especially, students need to know this is a thing, right? Because it could be impactful. We see a lot of times that a student would qualify for a Cal Grant A and only qualify for a Cal Grant A. if they meet the GPA requirement, and sometimes they don't. So sometimes they meet the GPA for B, but they don't have the income for B, and then they get stuck. So this gets updated every year. You can kind of see the information here. You can also see the information for assets. That's this can be challenging, especially here in California, right? Because if you have a shed in your backyard, that's probably worth $400,000. No, I'm kidding. Your property doesn't count, but it's one of the things that can be a little bit challenging. So this is income and asset. Like I said, we adjust it every year. This is on our website if you're interested in taking a look. All right, total income and net worth. So if we're talking about a dependent student, so the student is dependent, lives with the mother and the mother and father, or whomever, one or the other, um, then the income that we look at is the parent's total income compared against the income ceiling, which was that list that we just looked at. If the student's independent, then we look at the same thing basically for the student. Okay, so same thing when we look at things like assets. When the student's dependent, we're looking at only at the net worth of the assets of the parent. If they're independent, the same thing is for the parent. We have really good information in the Cal Grant Handbook. It will spell this out uh, in more detail, and it will show you the calculations and what that looks like. So for a good time, Cal Grant Handbook, highly recommend it. All right, financial need calculation. Student needs to have financial need in order to receive a Cal Grant. Um, we calculate this in the following way. First, we look at the cost of attendance. And every year, institutions send us, or they should, yeah, most of them do, the total cost of attendance. They say, this is how much it costs to go to our institution with everything included. So tuition, fees, housing, books, the new Xbox, I don't think they throw that in there, transportation, personal supplies, parking, whatever. They do a calculation and say, this is what it costs to go to our particular institution. And they send us that information. Yay. And then students will fill out an application, either the FAFSA or the CADA, the California Dream Act application, and it will create a number, a student aid index. And this is basically the number that is derived with the other information, all the information from the actual application. So we have a cost of attendance from the college, and then we have the SAI, and that's, like I said, derived from the information from the FAFSA or CADA, the income, the assets, tax information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we back out that SAI, and anything that's left over is the cost of attendance. So if, well, I think we have an example here, do we? Maybe, let's see. All right. So, okay. So that's basically the difference. Now we see the need is what's left of the cost of attendance, and then the non-need is what's covered specifically by that number, the SAI. The SAI is just a number. It doesn't mean families have to write a check for that dollar amount. It doesn't mean that they're going to have to necessarily end up paying that total amount. It's just a calculation that helps us arrive at what the actual need is for the students. And this is important because this will impact whether or not they're Cal Grant eligible, depending on the school they attend and the kind of Cal Grant they are awarded. All right. So this started back in 24-25. Schools may use the full annual 9-month cost of attendance with the calculated SAI to look at unmet need for the purposes of determining Cal Grant eligibility. So let's look at these. Let's just throw these all out here. So this changed, and actually, so this was helpful in many cases to to different students, and so here's the minimum Cal Grant need requirement. So a Cal Grant A is the maximum award amount plus $1,500, right? So the Cal Grant A is typically used at a CSU or a UC. It covers the basic cost of tuition and fees. That's the maximum dollar amount. Obviously, for students who are attending a community college, a 4-year program, they could be eligible for A as well. Cal Grant B is a very straight, very easy minimum Cal Grant requirement. You have to need at least $700. And then Cal Grant C it mirrors Cal Grant A. Excuse me. Um, so here's an example. Let's say the SAI was 16,000, and we're looking at the total cost of attendance for the academic year, and then we back out the annual amount. We back out the annual SAI, and then they still have a deed, which means they should in fact be eligible for a Cal Grant. So we have this information on our website, and you can certainly contact us if you want more specifics about this. It's a pretty recent change, but it's advantageous to a lot of students. All right, there we go. Okay, questions?
And, and let's get started. All right. So thank you, John, for getting us through the first half of today's webinar in just the basics of all Cal Grants. So I will keep us going with award types and cycles. So with Cal Grants A, B, and C, we've got, again, 3 programs, starting with Cal Grant A. Cal Grant A covers the tuition and fee award only. The only exception with that is for students with dependents and our foster youth access award. The minimum program length for Cal Grant A is 2 years. And then for any students who are awarded a Cal Grant A at a community college, that award will be placed on what we call CC Reserve for 2 years. Again, the only exception for that is our students with dependents and our foster youth students. Cal Grant B covers the tuition and fee award and includes an access award. The minimum program length for Cal Grant B is 1 year, and first-time freshmen will receive the access award only. The exception is our top 2% of all high school graduates. We usually send communications regarding that top 2%, so make sure you're subscribed to our listserv so you're getting all of our communications. And then finally, we have Cal Grant C. It covers the tuition and fee award plus the books and supplies award. The minimum program length for Cal Grant C is at least 4 months of occupational or technical program. This is the only Cal Grant that does not need a GPA to be considered. Cal Grant A and B do need a GPA to be submitted, but Cal Grant C does not. So that's what is going to elevate Cal Grant C above our other Cal Grants, as it doesn't need a GPA. So these are the award amounts for Cal Grant A, B, and C broken down by the school segments. So as mentioned before, any students who are awarded a Cal Grant A who attend a community college will have their Cal Grant A award be placed on Community College Reserve or CC Reserve. Again, the only exception to the rule are students with dependents or foster youth students who receive the Foster Youth Access Award. These students are able to receive their Access Award payments at the community college, and it does not, or rather, it does use up their Cal Grant eligibility. Let's move on to Cal Grant B. Students who receive the award at a community college only receive the Access Award since they do not have tuition at the community college level. The only exception are for students who are attending a community college, but who are pursuing a bachelor's degree program. It's also important to note that Cal Grant B only administers the Access Award the first year to students attending a 4-year university. And then once they are at their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year, the students will then receive the tuition portion as well as their Access Award. And lastly, we've got Cal Grant C, which is, again, specifically for students pursuing a vocational or technical program. Students can receive both the tuition and fees and book and supplies for up to 2 years. Students do not need to complete a C supplement form in order to confirm their enrollment in a qualifying program. And again, Cal Grant C is the only Cal Grant program that does not need a GPA. And then before we move on, let's take a closer look at Cal Grant Awards for community college baccalaureate programs. Students enrolled at least half-time in an approved community college bachelor's degree program, or CCCBDP, at a Cal Grant eligible community college may receive a Cal Grant A or B award. So for tuition and fee awards, the award amount must be based on upper division unit coursework fees only. Current upper division coursework fees are $84 per semester unit or $56 per quarter unit. A note here, the California College Promise Grant, or CCPG, does cover the $46 per unit enrollment fee, but not the unit upper division coursework fee. Therefore, the upper division coursework fees can be converted by can be covered by a Cal Grant tuition award. For Access Awards, the award amount is based on the student's total number of upper and lower division units for the term. So let's take a look at an example regarding these. So, just checking my notes. I guess we don't have an example, but for more information on the approved community college BDP programs, make sure you visit the Community College Chancellor's Office website. All right, so we are going to have a few test your knowledge questions for this part of our presentation. We've got this first one. I'm going to launch it right now. If a student is eligible for both Cal Grant A and B, which type will they be awarded by default? Let us know in that poll. Will they be getting a Cal Grant A, Cal Grant B, or it depends on the student's school of attendance? All right, it's mostly a landslide. Let's give it a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll and then share the results. The correct answer here is C, which most of you did get. The award defaults to the most beneficial Cal Grant to the student based on their school of attendance. Students may only change their Cal Grant type before their first payment with a G10 grant record change form, which does require a financial aid administrator's signature. And then once a payment has been reported, the Cal Grant type cannot be switched back. So that's key. All right, let's move on to the next one. We've got another question. So let me launch the poll. So we got number 2. We've got Evelyn is enrolled in a community college BDP program and is taking 11 units for the spring semester, including 8 upper division and 3 lower division. How much can she receive in total for Cal Grant B? Is it A, $672, B, $1,290, or C, $1,542? Take a look at the chart, compare their total units versus their upper division or lower division, and then you might have to grab a calculator if need be. This is a little tricky, especially if you are not at a community college BDP program. All right, this is a complete mixed bag, pretty much equally split almost between the 3. Give it a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, and 1. All right, so most of you got the answer for this one as well. The correct answer is B, $1,290 in total in Cal Grant B funds. So this includes the $672 in tuition and fees, which is the 8 upper division units that Evelyn is enrolled in. So if you do 8 times $84 per upper division unit, you'll get that 672. And then it also includes that $618 in access, which is from the 11 total units at 3/4 time that the student is enrolled in. So they overall will be getting $1,290. Great job. All right, so moving on, let's discuss the two different award cycles. We've got entitlement and competitive cycles. All right, so the entitlement award cycle is broken into three different categories. What entitlement awards means is that you apply by the priority deadline, you have a qualifying GPA that is also submitted on time, have a financial need, then you would be entitled to the award, and there is an unlimited number of awards. So the three entitlement awards are, oops, we've got E1, the high school entitlement, which is for our high school seniors and prior year graduates. We've got E2, this is the transfer entitlement. This is for students, usually without a Cal Grant, who transfer from a community college to a four-year university. And then we've got E3, this is the California Community College Entitlement Award. These are for our students attending a community college. So next, let's talk about the competitive award cycle known as C1. This is for students who are not eligible under the E1, E2, or the E3 cycles, and who also have their application and GPA submitted by the priority Cal Grant deadline. We do only have a limited amount of competitive Cal Grant awards of 13,000. So not all students who would be in the competitive cycle would get all of that, would get an award. As soon as we cap out of our 13,000, that's basically it for the year. Hopefully they get another chance the following year. And then next under the competitive cycle, we have C3. C3 is the award cycle that's specifically for Cal Grant C. Cal Grant C, again, is for our vocational or technical trade programs. The deadline for this is September 2nd, but awards are starting to get processed around beginning April. So I will go over each of these awards in more detail in the next couple of slides. All right, so let's start with our E1 students. So who is eligible under our E1 High School Entitlement Award? These are for our current high school seniors and prior year high school graduates. They have a 2-year window to qualify for E1. Here are some specific requirements. They must have a high school GPA or a test score submitted by March 2nd. Their FAFSA or CADA, their financial aid application, must be submitted by March 2nd. And then they also need to verify their high school graduation in web grants, usually the month that they graduate. And then these are the GPA requirements. For Cal Grant A, they must have a 3.0 GPA minimum. And then for Cal Grant B, they need a 2.0 GPA minimum. Next is our E2 Transfer Entitlement Award. Who is eligible under this award? These are for our students transferring from a California community college to a qualifying baccalaureate program who were not already awarded at the time of high school graduation. So these are the students who do not already have a Cal Grant, and they're transferring from that community college to a four-year university. Here are the specific requirements. They need to have their FAFSA or their CADA and a community college GPA submitted by the priority deadline of March 2nd. They must be under age 28 at any point of this awarding cycle. They needed to have attended a community college during the previous academic year. Make sure that there is no gap year between that, and that they submitted a transfer entitlement certification form on their web grants for students. GPA requirement for this is simpler. They need to have a community college GPA of 2.4 minimum for either Cal Grant A or Cal Grant B. Next is our E3 community college entitlement. These are for our students enrolled at a California community college during the award year who were not already awarded a Cal Grant at the time of high school graduation. The specific requirements, they need to have submitted a high school GPA, a test score, or a college GPA by September 2nd, and then their FAFSA or CADA must be also submitted by September 2nd. So that's a key distinction between our high school entitlement and transfer entitlement awards is our community college entitlement award has an extended deadline of September 2nd. GPA requirements for Cal Grant A, they must have a 3.0 high school GPA or a 2.4 college GPA. And then for a Cal Grant B, they must have a 2.0 high school or college GPA. Moving on to our competitive cycle, our C1. This is again for our students not already awarded under the Cal Grant Entitlement Program, so not under the E1, E2, or E3 cycles. The awards are not guaranteed and are limited to $13,000 per year. And once we cap out of that $13,000, that's it for the year. Hopefully the student would be awarded under C1 the following year when we open up our awards again to $13,000. Here are the specific requirements. We're back to the March 2nd deadline, so their high school GPA or college GPA and the FAFSA or CADA must be submitted by the March 2nd. And students are selected for the competitive Cal Grant using a competitive scoring matrix. And you can click on that link so you can see what that competitive scoring matrix is all about. And then here are the GPA requirements. Cal Grant A, students must have a 3.0 high school GPA or a 2.4 college GPA. And then again for Cal Grant B, just a 2.0 high school or college GPA. And then lastly, we've got C3 or Cal Grant C. These are for our students enrolled in or are planning to enroll in an occupational or technical training program. The awards are also not guaranteed as they are limited and are determined by the annual state budget. Their FAFSA or CADA must be submitted by September 2nd. Cal Grant C again has that extended deadline. The program that they're enrolled in should be at least 4 months in length. And then students will need to complete the Cal Grant C supplement form on their web grants for students. And then this is, again, the only Cal Grant that does not need a GPA. So great news. All right, so just to encapsulate everything that I talked about, this slide will talk about the timing of when those award cycles are awarded. All right, so the first award cycle that is processed is the E1 high school entitlement, which is again for high school seniors and prior graduates. And then we go to our renewals. Again, our renewals are going to be awarded a little bit sooner, which we'll talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides. And then after our renewal students, we have our E2 students, and then we move on to our E3, C1, and then C3 is the last award to be awarded. We do send communications about when these awards are being run. So that's really exciting for our schools to know when these awards are going to be run soon. So again, make sure that you are subscribed to our listserv. If you don't get enough emails from us, you'll definitely get more once you get our listserv, but you'll get all of the latest and greatest information from us. All right, so I gave you a breakdown of all of those award cycles slide by slide, but this is a great comprehensive slide just to summarize all of those different award cycles, when the application deadline is, what types of GPAs are acceptable for each of them, and any other preliminary requirements that are necessary for each of them as well. So we are, again, going back to our March 2nd deadline that we started this year, and we're hopefully going to stick with that moving forward. But the note at the bottom at the screen right there is just to let you know that the priority deadline for the 25-26 academic year was April 2nd, 2025. So that is the only exception that you're seeing here on the screen. All right, let's move on. In this next section, let's go over some special Cal Grant programs. So we've got Cal Grant B for foster youth. So while the Cal Grant B has been around forever, the existing requirements were expanded back in the 2018-2019 school year to provide additional opportunities for college students who were in foster care at any point since their 13th birthday. And their foster youth status is automatically verified by the California Department of Social Services. So 3 of the Cal Grant B requirements were expanded specifically for our foster youth, starting with the biggest of them all, which is the maximum lifetime eligibility, which is increasing our usual 4 years to 8 years or 800% only for our foster youth students. This means that a foster student who is awarded as a freshman in college could receive this award for 8 years instead of the traditional 4 years. Next expansion is the priority high school entitlement application window, which is extended. Typically, high school entitlement applicants only includes high school seniors and prior year graduates. However, verified foster youth can now be considered high school entitlement applicants through age 26. So they age out of the program at age 27. So they can be considered E1 through age 26. If they are attending a community college, they can also be considered a high school entitlement applicant, an E1 applicant, if they submit their application by September 2nd. So everybody else, those who are non-foster youth, would have a March 2nd deadline, but for a foster youth, they can submit their application by September 2nd, and they can be considered as a high school entitlement applicant, which is great news for them. And then finally, this brings us to the last requirement or the last extension, which is the E1 deadline. So that deadline is extended to September 2nd for our foster youth students going to a community college. So great opportunities for our foster youth students. And then a quick did you know, like I mentioned earlier, we can automatically verify foster youth status for most of our students through our partnership with CDSS or the California Department of Social Services. All right, so next is the Foster Youth Access Award. So this is a little bit different from the Cal Grant B Foster Youth Access. This is just the Foster Youth Access Award. So this Access Award was created for current or former foster youth attending California public colleges, so either at a community college, a California State University, or a University of California campus, or a private nonprofit, with the goal of enabling more foster students to receive financial aid and attend college. So this Foster Youth Access Award is an add-on to either the Cal Grant A, Cal Grant B, or Cal Grant C. Cal Grant A students who were in foster care will now receive a new Access Award of up to $6,000. Cal Grant A does not typically come with an Access Award. However, the Foster Youth Access Award and students with dependents are special exceptions to the Cal Grant A and are payable at all public colleges. So they will get that additional $6,000 amount. Foster youth with a Cal Grant B will also receive an increased access award of up to $6,000. And Cal Grant C recipients are eligible for up to $4,000 in foster youth access funds. And just like with the Cal Grants A, B, and C, the Foster Youth Access Award amount is also prorated based on enrollment level. So if they are attending full time, they would be getting that $6,000 for Cal Grant A and B, or $4,000 for Cal Grant C. A quick note is that students who qualify for both the Foster Youth Access Award and the Students with Dependents will be auto-selected for the Foster Youth Access Award. So if they're double dipping, they would be auto-selected to the Foster Youth Access. And then a quick did you know at the bottom here, eligible students can receive Cal Grant B for foster youth the Foster Youth Access Award, and the Chafee Grant in the same award year. So if you have foster youth students, let them know just to apply with their FAFSA or CADA because they could be getting a lot more financial aid by just applying. All right, I kind of teased it a little bit earlier. So next is our Student with Dependent Award, or SWD. So Students with Dependents is a program aimed at working parents that allows Cal Grant recipients who have a dependent child to receive a larger access award. To qualify, students must be attending a California public college and must have a dependent child under 18 years of age for whom the student provides more than 50% support. So while the Students with Dependents Award is not specific to foster students, we wanted to include this slide in this presentation because foster students who have a qualifying child could be eligible after they have aged out of the Foster Youth Access Award at age 26. Students with Dependents works the same way as the Foster Youth Access Award does, and even the award amounts are identical as you saw in the previous slide. Just a quick note before we leave this slide that students with a Cal Grant B for foster youth who also have a qualifying child could also receive the Students with Dependent Access Award for up to 8 years based on the expanded lifetime eligibility of the Cal Grant B for foster youth that we saw a couple slides back. All right, so a little bit more information on our SWD Access Award. So which of your students are flagged for SWD? Students who answer yes to children or dependents question on the FAFSA or CADA will be flagged. Students who are single, divorced, separated or widowed and have a family size that is greater than 2 will be flagged. And then students who are married or remarried and have a family size of greater than 3 will also be flagged. Once students are confirmed for the SWD Access Award, their base amount will increase to the SWD amount. So the base award, as you see here on the screen, is just a little bit over $1,000. But once they've confirmed that they are indeed a student with dependent, their base amount will increase to $6,000 for Cal Grant A or B, or $4,000 for Cal Grant C. All right, we're on the home stretch. This is the last section. We are going to cover renewals. All right, we'll do a quick overview first before we jump into our renewals. So I'll just bring everything up. So Cal Grants, as you probably hopefully should know by now, can be awarded for up to 4 years depending on their education level, whether they are a freshman as an EL1, sophomore EL2, junior EL3, or a senior EL4. And their education level, or EL, determines the percentage of lifetime eligibility. So it is important that your student's education level is verified accurately and that each student receives the maximum duration of Cal Grant eligibility. The lifetime eligibility is dependent or is determined by the student's EL at the time of their first Cal Grant payment during the initial award year. EL verification is initially based on the student's answer to the grade level question on the FAFSA or CADA, but it does need to be verified by the college or university based on the school's EL policy. And we always recommend to verify EL prior to disbursements anyways. That's just good practice. If you would like more information about education level verification, we'll be doing more about that. We'll be doing more information on that during our session B tomorrow. So here is a sample EL policy. Your institution's EL criteria might look similar to this one, but not necessarily. So here in the sample, EL1 is considered having 0 to 29 semester units or 0 to 44 quarter units and so forth. And the Cal Grant eligibility or the duration that they have Cal Grant for is expressed as a percentage. So 400% equals 4 years, 300 is 3 years, 200% is 2 years, and 100% is 1 year. So even though this is just a sample EL policy, it's really crucial that institutions do and have established their own EL policy, including procedures for completed units and transfer units. Let's talk a little bit about annual eligibility usage. So the annual eligibility usage is broken down by full-time, three-quarter time, or half-time enrollment status, and shows the percentage that is used up for each status. So for example, if a student was attending fall semester three-quarter time, it would use up 37.5% of their Cal Grant eligibility for the year. All right, we've got our last test your knowledge question. Let me launch the poll. So the question is, Sophia is a new E2 transfer entitlement awardee and a new transfer to CSAC University, a semester-based school. She was verified as EL3 prior to her first fall payment. She received a full-time payment in fall and a half-time payment in spring. How much lifetime eligibility will Sophia have left at the end of the year? Will she have A, 100%, B, 125%, or C, 150%? All right, let's give it a few more seconds. All right. Kind of sleepy today. We're not getting any of our results. So again, Sophia is our new E2 transfer awardee and a new student or a new transfer to CSAC University. She was verified as EL3 before her first fall payment and then received a full-time payment in the fall and a half-time payment in spring. How much lifetime eligibility will Sophia have left at the end of the year? Oh, I was getting some notice I might have not shown you the poll. That's a problem. You can't answer it. All right, here we go. We've got answers. All right, let me end the poll. And most of you got that. So the answer is B. Sophia began with 200% since she is EL3. So as an EL3, she is in her third year as a junior. She utilized 50% in the fall at full time and 25% in the spring at half time. So if you do a little bit of math, 200 minus 50 for fall and 25 for spring, we get that 125% remaining. All right, great job, everybody. All right, so just as we've done a few background information, let's finally get into the renewal criteria. All right, so we have a new and exciting renewal process beginning with the 26-27 academic year. So to start, the renewal awards will be processed as early as March. Before they used to run sometime in the summer. So that's really, really late. So now that we are awarding our renewal students so much earlier in March, that's great news. Another change is students only need one payment in their initial award year and only one payment or adjustment code needed for students in their subsequent renewal years in order to renew. And then finally, awards eligible for renewal will not be withdrawn until the end of the academic year rather than at the year-end reconciliation. So great news. We did do a webinar all about the renewal process. So if you have not checked that out, check that out at the bottom of the slide. We've linked that below, the Cal Grant Renewal Simplification video, which will go into a deeper dive of what you're already going to see here, including some helpful scenarios. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check that out later. So we're going to discuss all three of these changes in more detail in the next couple of slides. All right, so this slide shows the Cal Grant renewal requirement, including the changes made for the 26-27 renewal cycle. So in order for a student's Cal Grant to be renewed, they must first complete a FAFSA or CADA with a valid SAI. Renewal students are not required to file by the priority Cal Grant deadline. In addition, students must have at least one Cal Grant term in the prior award year satisfied with a payment, O-code, or qualifying transaction, depending on if it's a new or renewal student. Students must have also at least 10% remaining lifetime eligibility. And then once we've confirmed that the student still meets the most current income and asset ceiling and has sufficient unmet need, their Cal Grant can be renewed. So now we're moving on to one term satisfied for renewal, as I mentioned earlier. Before I get ahead of myself, before we used to have both terms or all terms satisfied in order for students to be renewed. Now we only need one. So first let's discuss the changes students will be getting in their initial award year. So they must receive a qualifying payment or equivalent to renew for year 2. This change complies with the California Education Code section 69433.5, where it states the recipient shall remain eligible for award renewal only if he or she is a California resident in attendance and making satisfactory academic progress at a qualifying institution as determined by the Commission. The key word in that education code is the word recipient, which is why initial year awardees must have at least one payment or O-code to renew. And then for our subsequent renewal years, students just need just one payment or one qualifying adjustment code. We'll have 2 charts that provide a comparison for you later on. But we are also not going to withdraw students who are pending to complete their FAFSA or CADA, as they have until June 30th of the following year to submit their application. So this is in efforts to align with FSA's timeline of their deadline of June 30th of that academic year. So yay! So I mentioned earlier there will be 2 charts. Here's that first chart that I mentioned. In the initial award year, the student needs to receive a payment or O-code in order to renew. The codes here in the chart are the qualifying transactions, and having one term satisfied will allow a student's award to renew. One exception is Cal Grant A on CC Reserve. They're not required to have a payment for renewal. However, we are going to start checking income and asset ceilings to see if the student will still be eligible for the award when they transfer to a 4-year school. And then this is that second chart. So for subsequent renewal years, we've got LH, LA, and NP. In addition to the paid codes up there at the top. So LA, LH, and NP are added to the list of qualifying transactions for subsequent renewal years, since the student has now been established as a recipient of the award. They got the award last year, so moving forward, the codes that are applicable to them are more. And then if you would like to learn more about these codes, I know I just touched upon them really briefly. Session B will cover all about payment codes in WebGrant, so make sure you come back for Session B to learn more about payment codes. All right, so what is not required for renewal? Students do not need to apply by the FAFSA or CADA by the priority deadline. They only need to submit their financial aid application before the end of the award year on June 30th. There does not need to be a verified GPA submitted to the commission. A GPA is only required for new awardees. And then finally, self-reported grade level under fifth year on the FAFSA or CADA is not required. All right, so a little bit more information on the renewal exception. Any recipient who was ineligible for a renewal award during the prior year due to not meeting minimum need, income, and or asset ceiling criteria will be able to renew the following year if all financial and other eligibility requirements for renewal are met and the student has remaining program award eligibility left. So here's an example where a student was initially awarded in the 23-24 academic year. She started off with 400% eligibility and used up 100% as a full-time student her first year. In her second year, she is made or deemed financially ineligible. But now in her third year, she is financially eligible. But even though she didn't receive any payments in her second year, 100% is still deducted from her Cal Grant eligibility. So now she is left with only 200% remaining eligibility. So let's take a look at a scenario where we take a look at renewals for renewal Cal Grant B to Cal Grant A, switching that. So this student was eligible for Cal Grant A and B in their initial award year and was awarded Cal Grant B. But they exceeded Cal Grant B income and asset ceilings in a renewal year. The student's Cal Grant was automatically switched from Cal Grant B to Cal Grant A. This is allowed as long as they had a Cal Grant A eligible GPA and fall within the income, asset, and need ceilings. However, once a payment has been made under Cal Grant A, they may not be switched back to B in a later year. And then here we have an example student who is an E1 recipient. They are a dependent student with a 3.0 high school GPA and have a family size of 4. The family's income in the first year made the student eligible for Cal Grant B, but the family experienced a significant jump in income in year 2. So now in their second year of Cal Grant, their award was automatically switched to Cal Grant A due to exceeding the Cal Grant B income ceiling. However, their grant cannot be changed back to B once a Cal Grant A payment has been made, even if their income falls back down the Cal Grant B ceiling. The Cal Grant income thresholds increase every year with the cost of living. And we post that on our website every year. So even though the family's income dropped back down below the threshold in year 3, in this case, the student was renewed as Cal Grant A for years 3 and 4 because they already got that Cal Grant A payment. All right, and that's basically it. I know I breezed through it really quickly, but before we give you our contact information, we are going to be sending a survey. We would ask that you complete that survey. Let us know how we did, if you would like to see more or less of something. And if you do complete that survey, we will be sending a certificate of completion once you've attended session A, B, and C. Those session attendance don't need to be consecutive. So if you don't have time to attend session B or C this week, but you have time the next time we hold a Navigating Cal Grant series in the next couple of months, take that survey, and then we'll send that certificate of completion once you've attended all 3 of those sessions. And then once all 3 of those surveys have been submitted, let us know. Email us at the training inbox which of the sessions you attended. We'll check our records, and then we'll send that certificate of completion over to you. All right, so this is our contact information. If you have any questions, if you did not receive the PDF of today's webinar, email us at training@csac.ca.gov. If you have any questions regarding web grants, any of your students, contact us at the school support line. If your students have any questions, they have their own student support line, so make use of that. And then that's basically it. Let me check the Q&A box to see if we're on track. Got no questions. All right. My team is on top of it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Do we have a few more? I think we have a little bit of time left. Just check my clock. We have a little bit of time left. So at this point, we are going to open our our participant window